EPA, the Supreme Court handed down a 6-3 emergency decision late Friday evening, overturning every assault weapons prohibition across the United States, taking effect right away. If you reside in California, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland, Jersey, or Illinois, guns that were unlawful yesterday are permitted today. Justice Thomas authored the majority opinion. Thomas, Roberts, Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Barrett ruled prohibitions do not pass. Bruin's historical tradition examination deny millions of constitutionally safeguarded weapons in widespread circulation and produce irreparable injury, mandating urgent emergency intervention. 3 in opposition, Sotomayor, Kagan, Jackson cautioned the judgment sparks a public safety emergency, impacting 7 states with broad prohibitions along with hundreds of municipal governments. Approximately 20 million AR-15 style rifles, AK style rifles, additional semi-automatic weapons formerly prohibited become permissible beginning Monday. Subscribe, because this emergency judgment impacts every firearm owner and alters legislation in 7 states instantly and comprehending what is permissible presently. Hacked it, which prohibitions were invalidated, why. Court-approved emergency intervention. And what unfolds afterward determines whether you can acquire weapons you have desired or states re-establish limitations. 7 states maintain comprehensive assault weapons prohibitions. PTMA AMD NJIL Second Amendment advocacy groups submitted coordinated legal actions under Bruin's historical tradition, standard lower courts, divided verdicts. Friday night, Supreme Court delivered emergency directive merging challenges and issuing nationwide preliminary injunction. Halting enforcement pending ultimate resolution becomes effective immediately. States may not enforce, prosecute, or confiscate firearm owners can acquire formerly prohibited weapons from dealers Monday. Oral arguments spring 2026, final ruling June 2026. Allow me to dissect what judgment establishes which weapons permissible, which states impacted, why emergency intervention approved, and what firearm owners need to understand. Point 1. What emergency judgment establishes nationwide injunction, halts all court-issued preliminary injunction under All Writs Act, blocking enforcement of any state municipal assault weapons prohibition while challenges advance. Interim relief pending ultimate verdict stays active until court rules anticipated June 2026. Throughout injunction. All prohibitions unenforceable. Bruin standard utilized prohibitions fail Bruin structure. Prost authorities must prove regulation aligned with founding period and Reconstruction period tradition. No historical tradition prohibiting weapon classifications based on aesthetic characteristics. Pistol grips, collapsible stocks, flash hiders. Founding period citizens possessed military-grade weapons. Initial AWB, 1989 California 198 years following Second Amendment interval shows prohibitions lack historical lineage. Widespread circulation standard. Heller safeguards weapons in widespread circulation for legitimate purposes. Semi-automatic rifles such as AR-15, AK-47, most favored rifles with over 20 million in private possession utilized for personal protection hunting. Marksmanship practice weapons utilized by millions for legitimate purposes are in widespread circulation, and shielded states may not prohibit weapons in widespread circulation. Irreparable injury. Firearm owners enduring irreparable injury while prohibitions enforced daily. Prohibitions active. Millions denied of constitutional guarantee. Constitutional breaches constitute irreparable injury per se, warranting emergency intervention. Court dismissed states' public safety contentions. Constitution creates hierarchy where enumerated guarantees hold priority. 6-3 tally. Thomas, Roberts, Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Barrett. Supporting injunction. Sotomayor, Kagan, Jackson. Objected. Contending emergency intervention. Too soon. Generate safety hazards. Permits unregulated access to instruments of warfare. Majority emergency intervention suitable when fundamental guarantees plainly breached. Point 2. Which weapons? Permissible and states impacted weapons. Now permissible AR-15 style rifles, M&P 15, Ruger AR-556, Daniel Defense AK style rifles, WASR, Arsenal Zastava PSA, AK-47 semi-auto rifles with detachable magazines and prohibited characteristics. Pistol grips, collapsible stocks, retractable stocks, barrel shrouds, threaded barrels, hiders, semi-auto shotguns with prohibited characteristics, collapsible stocks, pistol grips, detachable magazines, semi-auto handguns with prohibited characteristics. Threaded barrels, barrel shrouds, magazines, outside grip, formerly prohibited by designation Colt AR-15, Kalashnikov Uzi Tik-9, California Roberti Roos Act prohibited AR-15, AK-47. Hundreds of models by designation plus characteristics now all formerly prohibited. Semi-autos, permissible acquisition AR-15 with standard characteristics, pistol grip, adjustable stock flash hider. Play Monday New York Safe Act prohibited semi-autos with detachable magazines and prohibited characteristics now. Characteristic prohibitions unenforceable AR 15 seconds with all characteristics. Permissible: Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland, New Jersey. Extensive rosters plus characteristic prohibitions now rosters. Unenforceable characteristics. Permissible: formerly prohibited weapons. Obtainable: Illinois protect Illinois. Communities Act prohibited AR-15 AK-47 semi-autos with characteristics now unenforceable. Municipal prohibitions halted Cook County. Highland Park, Boulder, Deerfield, and hundreds of others may not enforce what stays restricted fully. Automatic weapons, machine guns under NFA, short-barreled rifles, shotguns under NFA unless individually deregulated. Suppressors unless individually deregulated. Magazine capacity restrictions stay. Ruling addressed only AWBS, not magazines. Prohibited individuals stay prohibited. Point 3. Why court approved emergency intervention. Continuing constitutional breach. Daily prohibitions active. Millions endure constitutional deprivation. Cannot acquire weapons for personal protection. Cannot exercise fundamental guarantees unlike breaches remedied through compensation. Second Amendment breaches during period of necessity. Home invasion civil disorder cannot be reversed. Emergency intervention essential. Lower court postponements. Tolerable cases contested for years. District courts, trial circuit courts, appeals 2 to 4 years per matter. Meanwhile, guarantees breached. Fundamental guarantees cannot remain pending years, while lower courts deliberate historical parallels. Plain Bruin breach prohibitions plainly breach Bruin on facial examination. No historical tradition prohibiting weapons in widespread circulation. No founding period or Reconstruction period parallels. States failed burden when breach plain and continuing emergency intervention justified. Public safety dismissed. States contended emergency intervention sparks crisis with military-grade weapons. Majority dismissed. First, semi-auto rifles utilized in minuscule portion of firearm offenses. Rifles all classifications 3% of killings. Overwhelming majority handguns. Second, constitutional guarantees not subject to interest weighing. Third, millions of law-abiding owners ought not be disarmed because lawbreakers might abuse preliminary injunction. Standard, satisfied probability of prevailing on substance irreparable injury absent intervention. Balance of equities supports intervention. Public welfare supports intervention. All satisfied probable success under Bruin. Constitutional deprivation is irreparable. Injury balance favors safeguarding guarantees. Public welfare served by preserving Constitution. Point 4. What unfolds afterward? Junction until ultimate ruling. Emergency injunction halts enforcement beginning immediately continuing until Supreme Court. Ultimate ruling anticipated oral arguments. April-May 2026, ruling June 2026. Throughout roughly 12-13 months, all AWB unenforceable nationwide lower courts advance cases proceed through standard appeals district trials, if not complete circuit reviews. However, Supreme injunction overrides all lower verdicts, even if circuit sustains prohibition cannot enforce during injunction. Oral arguments court arranged consolidated arguments spring 2026. All 7 state matters plus circuit verdicts argued jointly. Second Amendment advocacy groups NRA, SAF, GOA, FPC present for complainant state AGS defend prohibitions probable results 1 invalidate all AWBS permanently as unconstitutional makes injunction permanent. Prohibitions never return. 2 sustain narrow prohibitions targeting specific weapons lifts. Injunction partially permits restricted classifications. 3. Return for evidence gathering. Injunction status uncertain. Litigation advances. State reactions cannot enforce, but may compose new legislation attempting Bruin compliance. Impose heightened penalties for offenses with formerly prohibited weapons. Mandate registration. Intensify background check examination. None can ban possession of acquisition during injunction. Point 5. What firearm owners ought to do: acquire immediately beginning Monday when dealer is open. Can acquire AR-15 AK-47 seconds. Additional semi-autos prohibited Friday. Complete Form 4473 and NICS. No special licenses, no registration beyond dealer records. Take possession same day if NICS approves. Confirm states formerly prohibited roster, each state distinct CA prohibited models by designation and why. Prohibited characteristics CT hybrid. Before acquiring confirm weapon you desire was actually prohibited if wasn't acquiring. Now doesn't signify alteration document acquisitions. Preserve receipts Form 4473 duplicates. A yellow duplicate. Purchase records. If injunction subsequently lifted and state attempts retroactive prosecution or seizure documentation demonstrates lawful acquisition when prohibitions halted. Courts improbable to permit retroactive prosecution, but documentation offers safeguard. Injunction could theoretically be lifted. Stays until ultimate ruling or court alters directive. Theoretically could lift before ultimate ruling. Improbable. More probable stays until June 2026 if court sustains prohibitions, injunction lifts and prohibitions return. However, weapons lawfully acquired during injunction, likely grandfathered retroactive seizure, raises ex post facto and takings concerns. Understand what stays restricted. Fully automatic weapons SB-SBS, individually deregulated destructive devices. Possession by prohibited individuals. Breaches of remaining valid legislation, brandishing, threatening utilization and offenses. Injunction only halts AWB. All additional firearm legislation stay. Summary: Supreme Court delivered 6-3 emergency decision Friday evening, issuing nationwide preliminary injunction, halting enforcement of all state and municipal assault weapons prohibitions, taking effect immediately. California, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts. Maryland, New Jersey, Illinois may not enforce assault weapons prohibitions AR-15, P-47, and additional semi-automatic rifles with formerly prohibited characteristics now permissible to acquire and possess legal rationale. Assault weapons prohibitions fail. Bruin historical tradition test no founding period or Reconstruction period tradition of prohibiting weapons in widespread circulation. Semi-automatic rifles possessed by over 20 million Americans for legitimate purposes receive Second Amendment safeguard. Hates may not prohibit weapons in widespread circulation. Why emergency intervention? Firearm owners enduring continuing irreparable injury to constitutional guarantees while prohibitions enforced pending litigation. Lower court postponements intolerable for fundamental guarantees. Plain Bruin breach justifies immediate intervention. Timeline injunction stays active until Supreme Court ultimate ruling anticipated June 2026. Throughout this interval, 12-13 months, all assault weapons prohibitions unenforceable. Oral arguments spring 2026 ultimate ruling could permanently invalidate prohibitions, sustain narrow prohibitions, or return for additional proceedings. Firearm owners can acquire formerly prohibited weapons beginning Monday from dealers. Complete Form 4473 and NICS. Preserve documentation. Injunction could theoretically be lifted but improbable before June 2026. Weapons acquired during injunction likely grandfathered even if prohibitions return. Subscribe. Because assault weapons prohibition litigation is advancing swiftly, Clint and I'm monitoring every Supreme Court directive and oral argument impacting your right to possess AR-15 seconds and semi-automatic rifles. Emergency 6-3 ruling just permitted formerly prohibited weapons in 7 states. Understand what you can acquire now and what unfolds afterward.